Hello, everyone, and welcome to this coffee chat about the fractional world. And I can already see a few of you are joining in from Amsterdam, Barcelona, from Austin, Texas. Ben, you're crazy at 6 a.m. waking up for this, but hopefully to give value to you and everyone else. Lana, surprisingly sunny Amsterdam, which makes this coffee chat even better. So as you saw probably from the webinar, me and Sheila are joining today for a conversation that we wish we had when we were thinking about being a fractional lead, or at least going in the direction of fractional. And for the ones that I haven't met, I'm Hugo. I've been a B2B marketeer, go-to-market person for the last 15 years, mostly with B2B SaaS and IoT companies, from early stage, from the first euro up until 100 plus million revenue, and live in the Netherlands. And I'm excited to have this chat with all of you about being fractional. I've been fractional CMO or fractional CGO for the last 3 years. So I have quite a few experience, and the same with Sheil. So Sheil, feel free to give a few words yourself.
Hi guys, and welcome, and thank you for joining and taking the time to listening to us today. I'm saying hi from Barcelona. I live half of the time in Barcelona, half of the time in Amsterdam, and I've been a fractional CMO for over the past 2 years. And currently I'm working for 5 different clients. I always worked in hyper growth tech startups, and also always in B2B. For over like 12 years now already. So I have a lot to share with you guys today, and I cannot wait to share our insights with you.
Yeah. Thanks. And feel free to use the chat, the Q&A, to send all the questions. Yes, the recording will be sent later, the slides as well. Initially, we were not really planning on the slides, but we felt the pressure of getting a lot of registrations. And we were like, oh, we actually have to do this properly. We are not podcast hosts. We are not like just a marketeer or someone like yourselves that is trying to figure out their careers. And so for today, we have a few topics, and mostly input from you, from the comments on LinkedIn or asking a few people beforehand. So first, clarification, setting the equal bar on what a fractional CXO actually means. How both me and Sheil, and why both of us tag team into this is because we have very different approaches to fractional world. And so how we operate differently in the same domain, how to land your first customer, what to charge, portfolio strategy, managing multiple clients at the same time, what companies actually look at the fractional leads, some red flags, acquisition tactics, and marketing yourself. So it's a lot of topics. I know we booked this for half an hour. We're going to try to be efficient. And it's going to be quite an interesting conversation. If again, we are not like the ultra experts of everything. A lot of you are fractionals with tons of experience yourself. So feel free to also share on the chat as we go. Having said this, for a starting point, because some of you here, I actually know quite a few of you here. Some of you are consultants, some of you do advisory, some of you do interim. I think just to set the foundation, how we see fractional versus the rest. And I'm not going to go through the table. I'll send you this later on. But on a fractional world, mostly one of the big changes is that it is expected that you lead and you are embedded within a team, being a sales team, a marketing team, a go-to-market, finance, tech, that you are expected to lead and be embedded in a team. It doesn't mean that you are always a CTO. You can also be a fractional leader working with a CMO and just take a small expertise domain like product growth or retention, for example. But you are expected to do that. The other one is that you are expected to represent a brand and a company, and you might be part of the management team. Now, if you look at all of these, you might think about, okay, but this is almost like an interim role. So what are the differences between an interim and a fractional? And it's mostly one about the time frame and commitment. The interim is mostly there until a permanent FTE hire is there or returns from paternity leave or maternity leave, whereby a fractional is very precise commitments, sometimes 6 months, 9, 12. It's not supposed to be there forever. And then the other difference is that is mostly the suitability. An interim comes in always to stability of the team and process until the hire comes, whereby a fractional is actually expected to fix something, a go-to-market engine, a specific metric, a part of the culture or a process not working well, but is expected to add value immediately. An interim not always is the expectation. Also because the interim roles grew a lot in the enterprise sector. So they are more like stability kind of elements. And the last one, An interim is a full-time worker and exits upon the permanent FTE hire. A fractional, as the word says, is fractional, 2-3 days a week, 4 days a week. Yes, you can go to 5 days a week, but then you are really working full-time, and ideally you actually have multiple customers. So that's the main difference. I'm not going to go into the consultant and advisory. I'll leave you to read afterwards. But fractional interim, there's a lot of questions there. And again, consultants are more project-based. They don't represent the company. Advisory tends to be short assignments. I'll let you afterwards take a look when I share with everyone the slides. So this is set the foundation of, what's the difference and what is a fractional, which I expect a lot of people to know here. But one of the things is that if you're a consultant, be a consultant or a freelancer. Don't be a fractional. Make clear what you are here for. So that's it. Now, me and Shield have very different approaches, and I thank ChatGPT and AI for being able to do actually quite cool imagery these days, despite it took a lot of takes here. As you can see, I was not able to remove the process flow twice from the image, despite asking ChatGPT 5 times, please remove process flow a few times. So AI is not yet there, but we have different styles. So I'll share my style and she'll share her view. I like to what I call to go into deep dive mode. So I normally embed myself into just one company, max 2, but normally just one company. And I do 2, 3, max 4 days a week, but most of the times it's 3 days a week. And I just try to fix the whole system from within. And when I say a whole system, is a big puzzle. Could be a go-to-market, could be organizational setup, could be revenue operations, could be just a marketing organization. But I normally do at least 6 months within one company, 3 days a week. That's kind of my base formula. And for a variety of reasons that I share afterwards, but for me, it's like a deep dive mode. I really go into team sync, process flow, go-to-market strategy. So that's my mode of operating and approach to fractional. But you can have a different approach, and she has a completely different approach, which you can share.
Yes, thanks, Hugo. Boost mode. I think that's also the best description for it. I think I started also a little bit more on the deep dive mode because one of my first clients that I landed, Tescarilla, I was there for 3 to 4 days a week, right? So I started also more with longer days across the week with clients, and then it transitioned into like having multiple clients where I did more like deep dives. And it's really about figuring out like what suited me best, right? And I think that the boost mode suited me best, where I feel so comfortable in like getting in, making a quick analysis on what the status is, what needs to be improved, and then fixing the basics, but also on top of that, really building the strategy and how you can accelerate the business fast. I tend to start with 4 to 6 months, depending on the client. And also because I work only 1 day a week for most of the clients, we usually tend to start with 4 months. And the reason why I do that is also I like the flexibility, right? I think what is beautiful about fractional work is that you can get a glance of the organization and how it works and how it operates without really, doing an interview or trying to get the actual CMO role. And then once you like starting to work with those clients and you want to continue working with them, you can then extend that with another 4 months, so you get like 8. So certain companies like Churn, for example, I've been already with them for almost 8 months. Others I just started working with, and then there's this flow of like clients coming and going, and that's really what I enjoy most.
Yeah. It's almost like asking, are you more of a deep dive person or a boost mode person? And that doesn't mean a characteristic, but it does make a very different on the lifestyle. And we're going to get later on why we have these different approaches to things. It also has to do with knowing yourself really well. But it's good to know that in fractional world, there's different ways to go about that. I think one of the other topics was, if you like a lot of people here are thinking about, should I go fractional? What does it mean? So it's almost like how to land your first customer, and she has quite an acquisition engine behind her. We can share how we got our first customer, but maybe she'll just take the lead on this one first.
I think if you're not in the fractional game yet, it's very important to first, once you're still working full time or maybe working 4 days a week, that you can have already like a side project or some first client that you can land out of your own network. For me, that was, for example, DeliverAct when I had time between my work at Lightspeed and EVBooks, which was great because that was already like the first portfolio company, which is actually a very big brand right now in the restaurant industry. And then when I actually started to go into Fractional, I had a chat with Ugo, and then Ugo gave me another client that he kindly handed over to me, right, Ugo? So, I mean, network is like one of the most important things, and you really need to analyze, do I have the right network to get Fractional work off the ground, right? Because in the beginning, especially if you build like your brand and your positioning out on your LinkedIn profile, it doesn't mean it will happen overnight. So for me, it was first out of like my own network, then from a referral from Ugo, and the third client I landed was Test Gorilla, which actually came through my LinkedIn profile. So just by optimizing like my bio, making sure that I have the right description on what my possibilities are, I landed this very big client, Test Gorilla, which is a huge name. So yeah, I think those were like the three main things that happened in the beginning. And with that, it's also very important that you have specific proof points that you can show to those clients, right? So you can share the use cases, and that's why I always optimize my LinkedIn profile. I always make a mention about like the new clients that I have. I thank them at the end, and I note down like what we have achieved with each other, and these type of things really help like boosting your profile on LinkedIn and making sure that you get more clients through that actually.
Yeah, and I think from a positioning point of view, I really look at Silke. There is a lot of smart moves in terms of like the LinkedIn positioning domain. She has the luxury of having too many leads, which is an interesting approach, but we'll get there a bit later. There was a few questions when we were promoting the webinar of saying, okay, but how do I know if I'm ready to go fractional or not? And one of the tips I always give people is like in your network, if you have a specific service or positioning that you are very clear about as a fractional leader, so if you say, look, I'm going to be a fractional CMO, a fractional CFO or CTO, and you have a clear view of your added value, I would reach to 5 to 10 people of your network that work at companies that you say, hey, I really want to work for this company or with this company. Kind of have a coffee chat with them, just open, and just see if through the conversation, your pitch leads to some follow-up or some assignment. If you have between 5 to 10 chats and you have 0 assignments, you're not ready. Like bluntly put, if you have like, you talk to 5 people and you cannot even move the dent to have a further conversation with someone else in this company, then you're just not ready. And just give an example, she'll have this situation. My first customer came, occasionally from my previous network when I was at EVBooks, had the luxury position of having built a good network with a lot of C-level people, which means that when I posted that, look, I'm looking to what to do next in my life, I don't have to know, I'm in a sabbatical, but someone reached out to me and say, hey, I'm CEO of this new company, I know 0 about marketing, can you help me set the foundation from the ground up? And I didn't even know if I wanted to do that or not, but I did that for 3 months, I liked it. And I realized, oh, this is something interesting, like project-based, but then I realized I have to do a lot of sales. And then it came a situation of someone saying, hey, have you heard about the fractional world? I got the first assignment through a referral as well. And I just got lucky that first company had a PE, was a PE-backed company. The PE was really happy with what I did. And since then, the PE has been moving me from portfolio company to portfolio company. And for the last 2 years, 70% of my customers have been through the PE or VC angle. So this has been my path. So sometimes you also need a little bit of luck, but you can test the luck by, picking up 5, 10 people on your network, have a coffee chat, position yourself, see if there is an interest. If there's not, you're not ready. If there is an interest, you might be onto something. Now the question is, how do you know what to charge? And it's a bit tricky because Europe, US is quite different. So I put here a view on how to go fractional, because going fractional, if you decide to go fractional, and again, it's often at the beginning, it's not the same as freelancing. So if you decide to go fractional, it's really the choice of what I shared beforehand. It is a lifestyle choice to a certain extent. You need to choose kind of the lifestyle you want. So you can choose at the beginning to see a cost-based approach. And this is an example. If you're in Amsterdam, okay, what's my rent, mortgage, daycare, food, some extra, some savings, and how much I need on a monthly basis. And then you look at the worst case scenario. If I cannot find a customer, or I can find a customer that only gives me a day a week, which means you have only 4 days or 5 billable days in the end of the month, that means that you will need to get 4.5. You need to have a net day rate, so post taxes, of 1.125 if you work 4 days a month. But you need to put at least 30% tax, if not more. So you have to see your gross rate of 1,500. So that gives you already a gist idea of like, if you go cost base, your day rate is already on the high end. 1,500 a day is already something that for some companies okay, for some others not. So you already are filtering a lot. So you already better have a great network and a proven track record to back it up. That's one way. The other way, it's more like what you can call it a value-based approach, and the value base is, how do you see the value base? It could be as simple as, look, my previous salary, I had this net amount. And when I always say net, is because it's good to see that with Fractional, you take a lot more risk. Yeah, the liability is on you, the insurance is on you, the equipment is on you. If you get sick, you cannot bill. So you have a lot more risk. So you have to look at like, how much do I actually want post-taxes in my net bank account? So if, let's say, like in the past, you had 5K net, then let's say with a 30, again, I'm playing it with a 30% as a ground, you'll need 6.5 gross a month to meet the previous standard. But because you have a higher risk, you probably have to start charging something like 7.5 gross a month. And then it's a more of approach of saying, hey, the days per week is up to you. Yeah, so you can play around with how much days per week is here, but then you go to the company more saying, hey, we work on a retainer. I instead of a day retainer, I have a monthly retainer, and I'll make sure that I always give 2-3 days a week for you, and you work more towards outcome base. But you have always at least a fixed net income for a period, for a specific period of time. So this is two ways of going on how to charge. Now, some people ask me, can you also charge on project base? You can, but you're not really then doing fractional. You are just doing like a large project fee, which can be assumed as a fractional. You want to have the flexibility to scale up or down the days of the week, depending if you bring more customers or not. So that ownership means that the best way to position yourself is always with a day rate or a monthly fee retainer. That's an approach. Definitely highly recommend against doing an hourly fee. That's going to get you in a lot of troubles because you're going to have to track the hourly rates, and it's going to lead to a lot of confusion and discussions with your customers. So a day rate makes it more simple, easy to calculate for both ends. So that's the suggestion that we have. Yeah. Also, if you have comments or questions, feel free to use the chat, yeah, because we don't want this to be a one-way session of like just sharing. So if you have comments, if you have further questions, please do so that we can keep this interactive. I know it's not like we're not seeing everyone, but it would be nice to see what's coming up when you're reading or listening to all of this. Yeah, Sheil, any other comments that you have here on how you rate? Because you also have a mechanism of ratings that is quite simple. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really make a calculation indeed in the beginning, like what I want, what I'm aiming for to get in terms of like salary that I can pay myself out, right? And from that, I calculated back like how many days I need to work. Yeah, and then sometimes what happens is that I have clients where I start working like half a day and then they move to a full day. But usually my half a day rate is a lot higher because you cannot, usually not work with another client at that day. So I try to really understand, like, are they scaling up at a certain point? And then can I keep the same rate that I do with half a day versus like full days, So those are like things that I sometimes play around with.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. A question from Tani: with the new laws, tax and hours in the Netherlands, how does it affect you? Any advice? Yeah, so specifically for people that are not from the Netherlands has something called a ZZ Payer, which is kind of a one-person company. It had a lot of benefits, especially in the first 3 years. Now the authorities want to basically crack down and make sure that if you are a fake employee, a ZZ Payer, but you're basically a full-time employee of a company, that can put you in some complex situations where the employer doesn't hire you because he's afraid, or then the employer hires you but might have to pay some fines or actually treat you as an employee, which brings a lot of like healthcare and other kind of insurance issues. So 2-3 things to keep in mind. One, have your own system and email address, and everything else taken care from your own email provider and domains. So that's something I always recommend. Have your own separate domains, separate computers, separate equipment, and you make sure that with the company say, no, I'm going to work from my own ecosystem. That will make sure that you can say that you control your own hours. I always make sure that they invite my work email address outside of the company. Now, some companies have, security issues that you have to use their email address to enter the systems. That's perfectly fine, but make sure you keep both separately. And if you are discussing certain things in terms of project fees or on negotiation, don't use a company email address. Use always your actually work email address, as in work from your own one-person company. That's one. The second one, have your own office being home office or not. That's going to be a pretty particular one that you cannot escape. And then you have to be able to prove that you manage your own hours. And not the company manage your hours. So that means that, I always make sure that in the contract with the companies that is all stated. And as Ferdinand said, you can also set your own personal holding, your own BV, and all of this is away. But it also adds costs and other things. But that's also a solution that solves all these challenges. So that's one. So that's more particular for the Netherlands. Jeroen, for your blueprint, let me go to the next slide because that is going to be interesting. For bandwidth of your daily rate. Bandwidth of your daily rates. If I look at the Bart asked about this. It's a great question. I'll say, it's quite, it depends a lot on the country, but I've seen in Europe, what I've noticed, most of the countries, when you're looking for a fractional, let's call a fractional CMO just to set the foundation, the lowest I've seen is something like of a day rate of 800. And the highest I've seen to date was a company that was willing to go as big as £1,500, was a London customer. So that's the range I've seen so far. I have not seen yet someone that goes in the 2,000 day rate so far, but again, can happen. But the most average has been anything between 800 up to 1,500. And then it honestly varies a lot on the type of company, but that's the bandwidth I've seen on day rates. I don't know if people saw before, but again, if you're a fractional, I don't think you can make it on 500 euros day rate, to be honest. So I'll not go that direction, just in case. And Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we're talking also about like C level, right? So I mean, if you're like below that, if you're like a senior marketeer and you want to be like a fractional senior marketeer, then the rates are of course a little bit different, and you start to look at different types of fees. So that's something important to keep in mind. And then maybe I see a lot of questions popping in that we're actually going to answer in the next slides, but maybe we can only tackle the one from what about equity, because that's also part of a big part of like how you negotiate like the contracts and these type of things. And I think for that, maybe Ugo, you have a specific thing there that you can share.
Well, so equity is a good one. I think it becomes a little bit on an own choice. I can share that I'm currently actually discussing an equity with one of my customers. But the equity comes from commitment for me. So it's because they want me to commit from a 12 to 15 months because they might be looking at an exit or at a funding round. And I say, okay, if you want me to stay that long as a fractional, I'm not going to go full time because that's I want to still keep the fractional approach. But if you want me to stay and commit for 12 to 15 months to a single customer, then you have to give something else. So then I'm negotiating equity as if I was part of the management or an employee. So that's my take on equity. One, I have to really like the business or enjoy the momentum. But second, I'm tying up equity with either the time commitment, if it's longer, or I do equity. Also, I have another smaller company that is just new. It's a startup, has a early stage funding, but they are really good friends. And I'm like, okay, I can help you out. They cannot pay me. So they are paying me in shares as they grow. So I'm negotiating on an equity with them. But that's more like a friends relationship, etc. So you could negotiate equity and lower your day rate, but again, it's a high risk, so you really have to, it's a bet.
Yeah, I see that happening as well, that you usually equity comes more into play when you have more of an advisory role, right? And that you have like a passive income and a way to just make sure that you can sustain yourself in a way. But I think that for fractionals, indeed, it's most logical that you just lower your day rate and then get equity in return. There, I also agree with Ugo that you really need to understand like the company that you're like tied to it, because once you have equity, you will be tied to that company for a long time. You will feel responsible. You want to stay connected. So you just need to make sure from a contractual perspective that you arrange that in the best possible way.
Yeah. And then Ben, you were asking about the slides. Sorry, I was going back and forward so that the slides don't take over. So this is like you're asking about the strategy and how we go. We have different approaches again. So I only work with companies that have at least a 10 million ARR business. And the reason being is that, a few things. One, they already probably went through a few VP marketings or CMOs, so they already had enough of a frustration point on what they want next, or they're too confused on what they want from a, I don't know, growth officer, a go-to-market, or they're stalled. And so yeah, so I tend to work only on this because they can, they normally know a little bit better what they have. I also they already have product market fit, so I don't have to go through the whole product market fit direction. So it's also a phase of the company I enjoy. And I normally just position myself as a go-to-market fixer, within this PE and VC route and other ones. So I say, if your company is stuck, if you start to have churn, if you're stalled ARR and you feel bloated, then bring me in. I'll help you bring a new perspective. And I also get energy from flexible focus. So I prefer to have one company, which is a few deeper commitment. And the reason why is that you can see from this kind of ChatGPT picture is that I don't have 3 kids. I have 2 kids. And I couldn't remove again the third from ChatGPT, kept giving me something different for some reason. But I have 2 kids, so I need space for family building. I like to write a lot. So I want also to have that 1-2 days a week for me to be able to be with my family or be able to actually do other side projects. Like I also have a goal management platform service. So I like to build a little bit on the side. So this flexible focus for me is critical. And for that, I prefer to have companies I can trust and have a 6 to 9 month commitment. Also because they are a 10 million ARR, there is less pressure for, there's always pressure, but there's less pressure for, I need leads. They already have a business. So they already have the understanding and can and have the patience to have a 6 to 9 month project to see something change. Rather, if I work with a 1 million ARR company, probably they are like around the clock. And then my whole idea of working with a balanced focus doesn't exist. So that's the way I position and work with customers. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think my positioning changed a lot over the time because the more conversations you have with clients, the more you also understand what's needed and the trends that you're seeing, the questions that are popping up. I now coach, for example, at 2 companies, the heads of marketing. They have a marketing team. I'm just their go-to-market partner. I then work very closely with the heads of sales, usually with the founding team. And they really rely on me and like my advice on like what the next steps would be for the marketing engine. But you see a lot at like startups that have a head of marketing and maybe like a team of like 4 to 5 marketeers, is that usually that head of marketing is very specialized in specific fields within the marketing part, but they lack specific fields, and then I step in and try to coach them and help them on that. So I think that's what I'm seeing now more and more on my front. But at our companies, I'm also are just a sparring partner for the founding team. I just help them with the full go-to-market. So I even help them with like the complete tech stack, also on the sales side. I just bring in the right people to make sure that I can support them with the right go-to-market motion. Because sometimes I see stuff happening and then like, okay, how are we going to pull it all together to make sure that it works for both sides? Because I never believe in like a single motion that is just focused on the marketing side and is not aligned with what we're doing on sales. And I am always abroad. So I 50% of the time I'm in Barcelona, 50% of the time I'm in Amsterdam. And then next to that, I'm also traveling a lot to other countries. So I always tell them like, I'm usually not coming to the office. If you want someone that comes to the office, I'm not your guy. If I am in the Netherlands, I'm happy to come by. But that's also already somewhere where you see that people want someone to be in the office and then they choose for someone else, but that's then also I'm not the right person for you. So that's then fine. Yeah.
I hope we answered a little bit of your question about certain approach, blueprint that implemented customers. One thing I do have for customers is that I don't know if I don't think I can show it you. I have a Word document that has an explanation how it is to work with me and what I believe in. And it has a lot of like opinions and principles on go-to-market, for my own go-to-market, how I see companies, what I see the challenges today, what I hope to fix, some proven track records, some contacts of referrals. But normally I say, please read it carefully, this documentation. This document is a 2-page document. If you disagree with something that is there or don't fully agree, please talk to me because I'm not going to join your company unless we are alignment. So I always send something beforehand for alignment. So one of the things, for example, I have there, because fractional CMO is a big thing, is that if I come in and in the first week you start talking to me like, where are the leads and get me my leads, I'm out on the spot. I'm not there to get you leads like black and like just like that. So I have a proper conversation around what you hope to achieve 6 months, 12 months down the road, which kind of company you want to be down the line. And then I backtrack to say what I hope to achieve in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So just for you to know, I have at least a 2-pager that I always send to potential customers. Unless they're aligned, I refuse them. I'm in a position where I can refuse them for the moment. If I'm in a different position, I have to compromise. But for now, I don't compromise. I'm ruthless in that. So that's where I am. I think Shirley also had something on.
I think that what I usually tend to do is when I get an incoming request, I always have like a first session where we talk about like how they see marketing, what they are currently doing, and then usually you can already hear from how the founders are talking, if it's a fit or not. So leads, like for example, a very is a good example. And then when I challenge them and say, shall we talk about accounts instead of leads, then they're like, oh, she's already challenging me. And either they like that or they don't. And then you already feel like, oh, is this a match? Yes or no? So I really have that first intro call where I'm not so much like, oh, yes, I want to sell myself. I'm really trying to understand, would I be the best fit for your company to help you at the stage that you're at? And then based on that, I send out a proposal on how I think it could work. So I don't have like a standardized playbook. I just really see what the needs are. And based on that, I just customize my offer. And then how to manage multiple clients. Some of you might think that I'm crazy, and maybe this is like maybe this is my super skill, I don't know. But I think I come from a project management background. So at Lightspeed, I always worked on so many different projects at the same time that I feel so comfortable in also managing different clients. And every morning I wake up, I just open my agenda and just think, okay, these are the things that I want to get into today. And that really helps me. And I also plan the week ahead. On the Sunday, I just have a quick session on like, how is the week going to look like? What are the points? It's just really about the process and how you organize yourself around that. And like Ugo was saying, it's very important that you also get access to like a Gmail account from that client and that you start operating within the organization. So how I like to manage myself is that everything that is linked to, for example, to Female X Finance is in my Female X Finance drive. I do that from my Gmail and Female X Finance. So I also have different colors. I have different icons for them, So for me, I'm very visually in that specific aspect. As you can see, I work with colors, so I can recognize, oh, it's this client with this color today, and that really helps me organize my days and my work. I get a lot of energy from it. Like in my whole career, I always got bored very quickly. And I think this is the thing that just keeps me up, It's like it energizes me so much, so many different angles, so many different situations that that's how I tend to manage multiple clients at the same week.
No, it's a good one. And I see the Excel. I think if you notice, like a lot of the small details, like the icons on the Chrome profiles, the colors on each of them, the fact that you put the weeks of holiday there, it's incredible. I laugh at this. But it requires a lot of diligence and communication with the customer. So in my case, I have one customer, so my week varies a lot more. So I have less of a tracking of time because it's more of a balance. But a few things that for people that have to manage multiple customers, a few quick tips. One of them, you see different Chrome profiles. If you use Chrome, that helps a lot because different Chrome profiles means that you can customize for that company. Research, bookmarks tab, research history, all the documentation. You can do it there. I also do the same. I have also a drive for all the customer input and insights that is there. I have multiple Google Workspace accounts. No, most of the customers, Sam, for example, here, some of them are on Teams and Outlook, so I have to use their email addresses. I do use an application that syncs the calendar between my work email and any Outlook message or Google Calendar, which means that if I book a meeting with a customer on Outlook, it syncs back to my Ritmo email. So actually, I only use one calendar, which is Ritmo, my own work, acronym, and I see everything there. So I just use an application that basically synchronizes everything from any customer. So if I book something on Ritmo, it blocks on Busy the customer calendar and slots. So I can say the name of the application. I'm having a blank now, but that helps me basically synchronize all the accounts calendar-wise. I'll send you the app name. I just have to do a bit of a research. I forgot. I'm having a blank. I have to open it.
I also have on my phone, I just linked all the different Google accounts. So my Google Calendar on my phone has just like all the different accounts. So I can just see exactly, because sometimes it happens that there's something urgently coming like in my day for a different client. And then I have that meeting that day. So I switched like those hours around. It can happen that you're in that situation because I want to be flexible. I want to be sure that I can help people that if they require my help at that time. So then, my Google Calendar app is like the best way to connect everything together. And then to answer your question, Sam, about do you stay away from clients who are using a different solution? I luckily only have clients at the moment that are using the Google Workspace, so that's amazing. What you're seeing is that, most of the clients that I am working with don't even work in the Microsoft suite. And of course, this is a question that you can ask, right? So, but if you're short on clients, it might be something that you don't want to say no to.
Yeah, I am on the other side. I've been, just for this group, I'm fortunate that a lot of my customers are on Outlook and Microsoft. So whenever they say we are on MS Teams, I'm like, oh, God damn it. Because, engagement is much lower. Communication is going to be more challenging. They probably are still very email driven. But to be honest, I noticed that the customers that are on Outlook, Teams, are normally the ones that have all the challenges that I like to resolve. And they are a little bit less fast forward, modern thinking. So it's also like the profile. I think almost all my customers are on Outlook and Teams, and that also is just tells a lot about the kind of companies I work with and why they need help. Not to say that people that use Outlook and Teams is bad, because I end up enjoying the application and figuring out how to move around it. But Google, it will have been my preference, but I cannot always choose. There's one question I want to take from Aaron towards the end about the challenging aspect of being a fractional CMO. But before we get there, a lot of people are asking about, what do people actually look in fractionals? And I put fractionals as a whole because I noticed that it requires education, but over time, at least I'm now on my 7th customer or 8th customer. I think Sheila has more, of course, because of her style. But what I notice is that there's a few things that are always the same, even if it's a fractional CFO, CTO. One of them is high business maturity. I noticed that especially if you go through the CEO, or the CFO, or one of the founders, they are really looking for a sparring partner. And to be a sparring partner, they're not hiring you just to be like the functional lead. They're hiring you because they want to figure out the next phase of growth for them or the next phase of the company. That's one. The other one is that they're looking for new perspectives. So I notice in conversations, if you bring something that they're not expecting, you immediately increase the value. And at the same time, I put twice speed to impact. And because, that's also the role of fractional. If in 6 months you cannot bring speed to impact, you're actually going to impact for the rest of us, the world of fractionals, because, it's the idea is that you bring high expertise, high impact at a fractional of the price if you hire full time. So speed to impact, honestly, is on the minds when they're hiring a fractional CXO, which means that the pressure is high, of course. And at the end, they want a proven pattern recognition. They don't want a proven track record per se. Of course, they want that. But they want like some kind of he has done similar work for where I want to be as a company. So they want to figure out people that came in and already been there, done that, even if it's not necessarily in the same domain. So that's just a few things in terms of the fractional CXO. For the fractional CMO, honestly, it depends a lot on the companies. I think a red flag, we're going to talk about red flags, is like if they bring you in because they want to just increase the number of leads, as a whole. Or if they come as a fractional CMO, but you are reporting under sales. For example, for me, those are like yellow/red flags because there's a high chance, they're going to be very much into a performance marketing. Not to say that, of course, isn't your role to increase the go-to-market efficiency, like the conversion from marketing qualified lead, sales qualified to build a pipeline. But hopefully we educate them that you are more than just a tactical choice.
It's so interesting because not everybody understands what a fractional really is, right? So I also really feel that when I have those intro chats, I try to educate sometimes the founding teams or the executive teams on what fractional is and how I like to work, and that I should have the complete freedom to be embedded within their team. And I think that at Test Gorilla, for example, they did that so well. Like I was introduced as like the new CMO. I was completely embedded in the whole organization. I was part of the management team. I was part of the management meetings. I went to offsites, like these type of things. And of course, I was working there 3 days. But I was managing a team of 25 marketeers remotely, so it's so important that you also put your boundaries very clear from the beginning. Like, this is how I like to work. This is what working with me means, because otherwise you're gonna go into things that you're like struggling with.
Yeah. If you have questions or comments, please keep them coming in, and I don't have to wait for something. There's a question from Aaron, which I think you can tackle now. Yeah, he asked about what do you find the most challenging aspect of working as a fractional CMO. I think we can take that tackle alongside with the red flags, because a lot of that is actually the challenging part. So if I remove the question, so I think you can share a bit more here, Sheil, on this one.
Yeah, so especially in the beginning, when I just started with fractional work, you're not sure yet, like what type of clients you want, right? And so you're also happy with everything that comes your way. But I think that especially no product market fit yet, that's like a huge red flag for me. And I have been in those conversations where they're like, okay, we need to do something with marketing. We don't know yet, like our industries, we don't know yet, like we haven't really built that ground yet. So that for me is like a really big red flag, especially if it's paired with the expectation of aggressive growth, right? Because you're still figuring out. Also, no commitment on marketing budget. Of course, there are some companies that are not yet clear on their marketing budget and they want you to come up with a proposal for that. That's completely fine. But if you start as a fractional CMO and you're not given like the freedom to build that budget or to do something with budget, then how successful is your work going to be, right? So they need to give you at least like a ballpark of like, yes, the CFO has thought about marketing budget and we have some allocation there. So you can at least build around that. They want you to fix everything. I think, again, there it's also about setting your own boundaries. You come into a company in the intro chat, it's also like, yeah, we want you to do this, we want you to do that, we want you to do this, but there's like no marketing team, or you're just starting to hire the marketing team. So again, there it's very important to set like clear boundaries on what they can expect from you. For example, I'm not an executional person, right? So I always work with a team. I always work with a head of marketing. I always work with someone that can execute the strategy. And I'm more like a sparring partner in that regard. Of course, if there's help needed on specific aspects, I will, share that with them. But in general, I'm not an executional person. So that is very important to share in that regard. What I also see happening a lot is that founders, of course, are very involved with what happens on the marketing side, or sometimes very opinionated, that might not have a background in marketing or anything like that. So if they're not ready to give you the full ownership and just rely how you trust you and on your decisions that you're making, then that's also something to look out for, because then you're not really going to succeed if they don't embrace what you have to say. Also, unrealistic timelines. I think this comes more when you're into the company, right? It's very important to align with the CFO, with the head of sales, to understand like what are those targets and how are we going to get there, and then also draft a clear timeline on what you think is possible with the resources and the budget that you have. So it's again, they're also setting clear boundaries on that regard. I think for the rest, you guys can read those next points. I just want to make sure that we have enough time to cover the other stuff as well.
I think there's a good question there. I think there's also on your side. I think there's a few of them that you mentioned. So maybe you can take 2 or 3 that are the biggest ones, and then we can answer some of these questions.
The fractional head of marketing is usually someone that is like at a stage of when they had like seed investment or just a Series A, and it's usually someone that has been with the company from the beginning. They have, and I had that myself, right? When I started working at Lightspeed, I just started as an event marketer and a project manager, and I grew into the head of marketing role. But then how do you make sure that that person is educated on all these different facets? So I think that is really the difference between the CMO is like the experience, the years, like how many different aspects of marketing have you touched, versus a head of marketing that is usually someone that grows into that role from like any other marketing division or specialism. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Also, one of the now it depends on the size of the company and which stage they are and what kind of team. Sometimes you are in fact a CMO, but they call it head of marketing. So it's good always to clarify that. But as the role says, if you're a fractional CMO, I would expect that either you demand or you ask that you are part of the management team. And as a fractional head of marketing, that's not necessarily true. So yeah, it could be that you are a fractional head of marketing, but they say, yeah, but as a CEO, I don't have time, and you're going to work with the CRO directly or the CCO. Whereby the fractional CMO, you also report directly to the CEO, and you should be part of the management team. Now, time is scarce. Sometimes the management team distracts with too many topics. But yeah, I always like to be part of the management team if I take on a C-level role, because you get so much insights that otherwise you won't get. And I think that's one. And I think there was Aaron asked about the most common issues you encounter. I think she'll share some of them already. And specific metrics. Well, one of the most common issues I always see is that when the company is not as good as it's always promoted. Yeah, when the founders or the CEO is promoting the company, is always selling to a certain extent. The truth is always like somewhere in between. But normally the issues I see is that there is a lot. At least I see a lot of broken processes. I see most of the companies I work with 10 million ARR. They don't necessarily have a growth or an acquisition issue. They actually have most of the times retention process issues. They go to the point where they just for too long work on activation, expansion, retention, like their customers. Most of the times, 8 out of 10 times, they have a churn issue that they never talk about. At least for my, the portfolio strategy companies. So when I come in, sometimes I tell them, look guys, I don't want to focus on acquisition. I want to focus on upsell, cross-sell, and make sure the customers we have stay there. The way I avoid that, before getting a customer, I ask a lot of data. I want to know their ARR. I want to know the net ARR and annualized. I want to know the profit margins. I want to know their NPS scores. Sometimes they are on G2, Gartner, sometimes they are not, but I try to get as much information as possible. I ask about their 2-3 years results in terms of EBITDA, and I ask about their eNPS score, their turnover, because sometimes you enter a company. Already happened to me that I entered to a customer, everything was exciting, but I didn't know they actually had an internal hidden layoff like a year before that took out 30-40% of the people. So a lot of the people that were there were still incredibly nervous. So I was like, okay, so I had to work a lot on team trust, team dimension, culture of the company, which I didn't expect it. So these are some of the metrics I always ask. Very revenue, financial driven. It tells me a lot about the company and the product or service. That's it. Maybe you want to address some of the rookie mistakes, Sheila, and so you don't get some of the time.
I think for yourself, it's important that you just make sure that you're aligned with what the clients want, and also for yourself around undercharging. Like, I think the example that Ugo gave about what to charge is very important, that you get that clarity before you start having conversations with your clients. It's just it's a sum that you need to make on like how much revenue do you want to make to support yourself or to sustain yourself. So that's very important that you do that before you go into any official contracts. Not defining your scope or boundaries clearly. I already said that. It's very important to tell them what you will do, but also what you won't do or what you're not specialized in, because sometimes they then expect you to run LinkedIn ads or do something like that, right? So you just need to make very clear, like, okay, if I come in, we do need to have budgets to make sure that we can work with freelancers or build an in-house team or to do anything like that, depending on like the size of the company. And I think that it's also important, and I sometimes had that where I got stuck into execution, for example, while your value is in strategic leadership, right? So then there are all these things that need to happen, and there's this tiny team, and you just want to make sure that those things happen. And of course, as a leader, you jump in whenever it's needed. But if you only have 1 day a week, you just cannot be executing. Maybe when you work through 3 or 4 days a week, you are more likely to help with executional stuff because you have more time for those type of things. So yeah, I think those are the most important ones.
We have a question from Brona. Brona, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. I'm sorry about this. About expectations of performance. I'll put on the chat for the Q&A, and I'll get back to you on this one. Maybe she'll just your view on acquisition tactics. There was a few questions on acquisition tactics.
Yeah.
Maybe you can share some, and then we can go into the final questions. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really see acquisition as how you also do acquisition for other companies or brands, right? So you are your own brand, and you need to first understand like how you want to position yourself, and then how you can communicate that on the channels that you use to reach your audience. And in this case, for me, that's really LinkedIn. LinkedIn for me is like a gold mine. I position there myself, but for me, posting and all of these things goes in ups and downs. Like right now, I'm actually too busy to even manage my own content calendar at the moment. So I got too many inbound requests. So then I scale the posting and those type of things a bit down. So you need to understand like how to manage your own calendar with like doing the acquisition tactics. But it's very important to build a pipeline, especially if you have relationships or partnerships that are between 4 to 6 months or beyond 6 months, that you know, okay, 2 months in advance, I'm going to start working on my acquisition tactics, and how am I going to do that? For me, it's really the most important thing. We already mentioned that also in the beginning, is like the network that you have within LinkedIn, but also outside of that, communities that you're in, maybe events that you're attending. I did, for example, an example where I gave away free coaching around Christmas. That was a thing that I didn't expect much from, but I got a huge inbound lead flow because of that, and some clients as well. Didn't cost me anything, only a few hours. And that worked really well. So it's really about how do you build your own tiny campaigns to get the leads in. And yeah, that's basically how I went about that. I don't know, Ugo, if you have anything else that you would add to that.
No, well, in terms of acquisition tactics, of course, some people will say like, okay, you have to build a LinkedIn profile, etc. I'll get there perhaps on this one, which is how to market yourself. There's a few things that for me, some of them are passive, is about your career, but I think your positioning, point of view, and content is a foundation. So I think you need to have that clear for yourself beforehand, before even going after customers, etc. You just have to be clear. Even if you're not clear, as I said, you can start testing out and just saying, okay, I'm going to position myself as this with this profile. It's like the ICP customer profile project. You do that for yourself, and then you just do an experiment for 3 months, continuously post quality content with a point of view on that. Meet with people of your network to see if they are interested, and if you build appetite, that's great. If not, not. If you're doing that while having a current permanent position at a company or a job, even better, because you do that prior to actually going on your own. Activating your network, I think this is one of those where I say you have to be bullish on this. You cannot be shy. I think you just have to be out there. It's a bit hard. Sometimes I don't like it because I'm also a little bit on the friendly side. So sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm going to bother someone, etc. So I'm not the best outbound person, to be honest. I build almost everything through networks. Yeah, sometimes the personal website helps. Your LinkedIn profile is definitely even better than the personal website. And then the last thing is just your reputation. Unfortunately, nowadays, your reputation is not just your reputation as a person, it's also online reputation, as in like how people know you from these different channels. And your proven track record, honestly, that speaks tons. And when I say proven track record, also means what Shield does, which is, I'm a fractional CGO for this company. I just finished this project and these was the results. I'm now collecting codes from all my previous customers because that was something I didn't do. And I was like, you know what, I should actually do due diligence. I finish a project, get the codes, get a small case study they agree to. So I do that right away so that you can have that. Now, there are things that are below. I put the iceberg because I thought it was funny. But there are things that you don't really know, which is like the skill set, the communities, the attitude, behavior, energy management, your portfolio design, your values, all of that, impacts a lot how people see you. Communities are also a great way. If you don't have nothing, start with a community. I share a few of them now below. They are not all of them, to be honest, but they give you a sense. Let me just put a note while you maybe can see the questions and see what comes. while I just put a few of the, I think, there's just a few communities I'm part of, for example. Not all of them, but I just put there. But for example, I did a mistake here. So in the Netherlands, there is a 10x team. I didn't met them. I didn't use a platform, but I heard good things about that. I think Ferdinand or someone from the growth syndicate is here. I think they know them better, so maybe I can give an input. Once I joined to Scalewise through a connection because I knew the founder, and actually got quite a really interesting process to a digital sales enablement room. And actually, for the first time, I did a process as a fractional CMO for hiring a fractional CMO. I went to the final process, was between me and someone else, and they ended up hiring no one and upgraded the VP of marketing to the interim CMO role. So through the process, it was very pushy on them, saying, why do you need a fractional CMO? What do you really want from a fractional CMO? And I think down the line, they realized we actually don't need a fractional CMO. We just need to, a full-time VP marketing that grows with the company. And that was it. And let me just see. I think that's mostly it. I think we have 5 minutes to wrap up, and I'm trying to see. Veronica had a question about how you manage expectations around performance management or team members. Oh, that's a great question. Look, I have a few things I have as a foundation when I join the company and I take the lead on the team. The first one, I clarify what is a fractional CMO to the team. A lot of team members don't know. So I also explain to them, look, it might be strange, but I'm not your permanent CMO for the next 2-3 years. I'm here for 6-9 months. I'm going to help the team. I'm going to help you move to a better direction. And this is what I hope to achieve. And I want to listen to you and just make things better. That's it. Then normally I just try to listen to them, see what kind of patterns they have, challenges around the business, their view on marketing or go to market, and then just try to absorb that. I normally try to see what can I do in the first 30 days that will help you give the confidence that we are shifting towards the right direction. And I normally try to actually achieve that. And the last thing on performance management, and that's more my take, I normally come in and say, I'm not going to make any moves or changes, at least with the current team set, in the first 3 months. Just because a lot of people think a fractional person comes, he's going to change the team, he's going to let go people, which happens a lot of the times, to be honest. But I try to make those after 3 months so that I can actually have a fair chance to get to know everyone. But that's me. That's the way I approach it. And that sometimes creates a pressure on the team. Some people can cope with it, some people cannot cope. And that's also a way of seeing things. But I also I'm also honest with them to say, look, some things are changing because the reason I'm brought in is because things aren't working. So it's just also being bluntly honest with them. That's the way I take.
And usually the founders or the executives are also like looking at you to say like, hey, what is your view on like the current team there? Do we have the right team for that next step of growth? So you're also advising them on making those next steps. But indeed, in the beginning, it's very important that you build a relationship with the team, that they trust you, that you get the best out of them, and then work your way towards how you envision the team setup. I saw also a question from Aaron around when you start working with a new company, what are some of the most common issues you encounter? Are there specific metrics you often require more attention? I think for me, what I always see is that most of the companies have a very broad positioning or not even thought about positioning or ICP, or like really the audience that they want to go after. So I think that's one thing that I always try to get very clear from the beginning and have that alignment also with the sales organization. I see it happen almost at every client that I work with, is that sales is doing this and then marketing is doing that. There's no alignment whatsoever. So it's very important that you have a good relationship with the head of sales and that you try to understand like, how do we get the targets? And in terms of like specific metrics, usually what I tend to do is like I look at like go-to-market efficiency, and I look at like total from all the total traffic that they are getting, like how much is converting and all of these things, like for like all the stages in the journey. And then you really identify very quickly what is going well and what isn't going well. Now, I also think that traffic these days is like a vanity metric, and that you should not focus on that, depending on like what type of business you're running, of course. And I really rather look at like account-based approaches, where you identify the customers that you want to go after, and from there you look at account engagement metrics and these type of things. And most of the companies that I enter working with is like that transition from going from lead-based to account-based at the moment.
Yeah. We are on the clock. I think if you have our questions, please send, but we're trying to also be respectful of time. There's a question from Tanya, how we leverage AI in a fractional CMO role. I think this is one of the most exciting and scary times for being a CMO or a fractional CMO. I think there's a lot of changes happening in the marketing domain. It's probably every single C-suite is a tough role, but I think the CMOs are actually having probably one of the toughest changes in the role, because the pressure amounts to the CMO in ways that doesn't amount to the other ones, or at least the expectations are incredibly high, of course, with CROs, CFOs, but CMOs have so much on their plate now, from positioning to acquisition to retention to customer journey to messaging it's incredible. Now, AI. For me, the way I observe and get to know the customers thanks to AI is just like completely different from 2-3 years ago. I use a deep research of, Claude or OpenAI. And the way I do it is I create immediately off the shelf, if I have a new customer, I create a custom GPT. That's my take. I do a custom GPT. I upload all, safe to upload information around the company. And I export and scrape everything in terms of like if there is a G2 or Gartner or online web or success stories or website page, I scrap everything. I put everything on the GPT. I give specific instructions to it. And then I do afterwards deep research on the industry and the ICP and the customers. That's immediately my first thing. And the amount of things that I gain and I read and I learn from it, it becomes like my own assistant on understanding the company industry and the company customers. And that's the way I use the fractional CMO. The second thing I do is that I use it for the first interview with customers and partners, because that's the first thing I try to do, meet people, customers and partners. And I just do all the recording, absorb, summarize, and try to get a quick win on the point of view and messaging of the company versus now versus later. And I try to get the buy-in from the founders and at C-level that this is the right direction. So there's many other things like workflows, etc. But this is the first immediate thing that for me as a fractional CMO makes it that within a week or two, I feel that I'm on par, at least with a high level base of what the industry is about. Naturally, afterwards, the technical details take months to fully understand the business, but probably would have taken me 100 days to get to the same level. That's on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Notebook LM is amazing as well. Yeah, great. Yeah. Thanks, Sophia.
Yeah, it's the same on the LLMs. I just have like separate folders for like all the different clients that I have, and I just make sure that I train the LLM on like their positioning and these type of things. If we don't have that ready yet, I use it also for the prospect interviews that I have to analyze the trends in the data, and then I use that as well for building up the positioning house. And other than that, I always try to challenge the teams around using AI and becoming more sharper in using AI. If they don't have that embedded in their organization yet, we're trying to understand how we can leverage it more as an organization, especially in smaller teams. It's important that you're efficient and that you embed specific tools to increase the efficiency there. So that is also something that I try to take into account. All right, I think that we've come to an end. I see people already dropping off.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everyone.
Yeah, thank you everyone, and hope you enjoyed and connect with us on LinkedIn. And I hope you enjoy this. Thanks.
Bye bye.